In the last video, we learned how to use a guess and check table to solve a problem like this. And we also were able to use our table to write an equation and then solve that equation using the properties of equality and also our work with algebraic expressions to come up with a solution. And I'm going to do another problem here. And I'm going to draw a line right underneath this and do my second problem from the second slide. But I just want to point out that in your problem journal, once you do a problem like this, and if you're really comfortable with this, that's great. And you make a note of it in the margin. And if you struggled with this and you're not sure, then maybe you also want to make a note. Check with partner or star teacher. You want to have some kind of reflection in your problem journal that you can go back to. This is important because when you sit in this class, immediately, if you could open your problem journal to something that you did the night before that you had some success with or you struggled with, that's an important thing to be able to check in about and to be able to show your solution to your partner if they were not able to do this problem. Now, the second problem in the slides, I'm going to just to give another example. And it says the sum of three consecutive integers is 531. What are the three numbers? So again, I'm going to write that down. The sum of three consecutive integers is 531. What are the numbers? Question mark. So again, I want to solve this using the same strategy I used before. And the first thing I'm going to do is I know that three consecutive integers are like 5, 6, and 7, or 10, 11, and 12. And so I'm going to make a guess and check table again. And again, you might be able to figure this out just by punching some numbers in your calculator, something like that. But really, you need to develop a strategy for approaching problems. And that's what we do when we practice. We don't necessarily need this structure to solve this problem, but it's very important that we practice it so that it's available to us when we need it. So I'm going to guess number 1. Now, I know if you add 3 consecutive numbers and it adds up to something more than 500, I need something kind of big. So I might guess 200. And then look you know what the next consecutive number is. It's 201. And the one after that, number 3, is got to be 202. And what did I really do to 200 to get the next integer? I just added 1, and then to get the next one after that, I added 1 again. I took this number and added 1. And so those are my 3 integers, and if I add them up, I get 603. So the sum is 603. And remember, the last column, the first column is always our guess. And when we're dealing with single variable situations, like this one, once we make one single guess, we should be able to figure out the rest of the problem and check and see if it's right. I'm going to check that the sum is equal to 531. And it's too high. So I'm going to adjust it a little bit. Maybe go down to like, I don't know, 160. And that makes this 161 and this 162. And when I add those up, I get 300. My 60s, my 360s make 180, so that's 480. 481, 482, 483. That gives me 483. And that's too low. So this is what's great about guess and check also. Now we've got kind of a range to think about. And I'm going to pick something in the middle of that range, like 175. and then 176, 177. And this is good adding practice too, right? So when I add these up, I get I get 300s, plus my 370s make 210. That's 510. And then 521, 528. I'm really close. It's still too low, but you can even see that I'm actually 3 points too low. So I know if I just go up by one here, all my numbers will go up by one. And maybe when you add those up, you see that you get 531. And that's just right. So we know our numbers now. But again, the task is to write an equation. And maybe you could have done this without having to go through all of this. But I like to really model the guessing and checking and then how we use this table structure to write our equation. Again, you're going to get harder and harder problems, and you're going to need a strategy for constructing your equation in an intelligent way. So my first number, I say, instead of guessing a number, I'm going to guess a variable n. And then the next integer's got to be n plus 1. And if I add 1 to that, that'd be n plus 1 plus another 1. That's just n plus 2. So those are 3 consecutive integers. And I know that when I add them up, the sum should be 531. Oops, I miscopied there. This is n plus 2. So look, I wrote an equation. I used this table to write an equation. And if I just work with the left-hand side for a minute and combine like terms, I get 3n plus 3 equals 531. And using my properties of equality to work to try to get the n all by itself, I can subtract 3 from both sides of this equation, and I end up with a 3n equals 528. And then dividing both sides by 3 to get 1n all by itself. And 528 divided by 3, sure enough, that's 176. So the 3 numbers are the 3 consecutive numbers are, wait for it, 176, 177, and 178. Okay, so that's another nice entry in my problem journal.